What you're about to see is one of the most immersive animal exhibits ever built. SeaWorld Orlando's Expedition Odyssey, once known as the Wild Arctic, an experience that will take you straight to the top of the world to come face to face with giants that you can find above and below the ice, and even feel the same atmosphere that they do. If this sounds a little familiar, that's because it's actually the sister attraction to SeaWorld San Diego's version that opened 2 years later. In this episode, we're going to explore every detail of Orlando's exhibit like we normally would. We're also going to try out the park's brand new flight simulator, and later I'll even compare and contrast this Wild Arctic to San Diego's. Before we start, I want to see if you can name this species that will appear in the next episode. Expedition Odyssey is an absolute must after a Shamu show, and we're going to start the tour on the left side of the complex by buying a locker, dropping our things off, and getting on SeaWorld's newest ride experience. In 2025, Expedition Odyssey replaced a much more intense helicopter simulator that's similar to Disney's Star Tours, with a more family-friendly simulator like Disney's Soarin'. The time outside did say 70 minutes, but it was more like a half an hour, so we definitely couldn't complain. And even though there isn't much theming in the queue, I also didn't mind admiring all the amazing photos of Arctic wildlife. You are given the option to bypass this ride, so if you would like to do that, skip to this timestamp right now because we are about to board. I'm honestly not a fan of SeaWorld's shift towards rides, but I've always loved the idea of a wild Arctic ride. It's all part of the immersive story that we were literally just flown to the Earth's summit, and when you're a kid, this is the coolest thing in the world. Since this is all indoors to obviously keep you out of the Florida heat, everything is under a simulated sky dome that changes the lighting throughout the day. The designers did everything to make you feel like you were dropped off at a research station. A giant satellite dish, luggage, equipment boxes, rock, fake ice, and even a real ice wall. If that humidity outside is slowing you down, this is definitely the solution. And so is their walk-through Antarctic penguin exhibit that's about 30 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, I could have sworn that Wild Arctic was actually really cold at one point, but the curator told me that it's somewhere in the 70s, which I guess for Orlando, that's kind of cold. This is our very first animal exhibit, and you don't need to wait for the animals to surface to know that you're looking at a beluga. These are one of the few whales without a dorsal fin, which helps them sneak under the ice and keeps their body heat locked in. And their blubber is about 5 inches thick and makes up 40% of their body weight, and that's how they can survive in 32 degree Fahrenheit water. But what you're looking at is actually 55 degrees Fahrenheit. A lot of whale and dolphin exhibits can be kind of boring, but this one is totally different. The water is crystal clear, bright, has awesome rock work, ice work, and a bunch of little crevices that they can sneak around. The whales can swim through a tunnel that takes them to an outside holding area. And you can even see a ship's mast at the bottom of the pool. But I'll get to that in a bit. From above, you get 2 perfect views of this habitat in its frozen coastline backdrop. The land sections were built with harbor seals in mind, and for the trainers to show off their AZA-accredited care. And if you want to get a closer look and put yourself in their shoes, SeaWorld does offer up-close encounters with Kenai and Samson, who are brothers from their San Antonio location. Our next stop is literally a recreated capsized ship, one of the largest themed props I've ever seen in a zoo. But it's a little more than that. This is based on the real-life HMS Erebus, a 372-ton British Royal Navy bomb vessel that launched in 1826, but met its fate in 1846 in the Northwest Passage, and it wasn't discovered until 2014. At SeaWorld, it's sort of the base of this wild Arctic research station. One side has an open view out of the ship that looks out onto Beluga waters, and the other side, well, you're actually looking through glass this time, but you can go toe-to-toe with one of the few kelp gulls in human care, and penguins. Believe it or not, this displayed polar bears for 19 years, until their last ice bear passed away in 2014. As much as I know how some people miss them, SeaWorld was definitely smart not to replace them with another bear. Instead, they originally brought over 11 harbor seals to fill in the space. In 2024, penguins took over. This isn't some kind of educational statement to show species that live on the opposite sides of the world. In fact, Magellanic penguins are from South America. They're warm tolerant, and they actually were already here as part of a behind-the-scenes experience. I was told that their old area is being worked on, and SeaWorld did confirm that their stay in the Arctic is temporary. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to anyone that might still be a little misled. No, there are no penguins in the northern part of the world. Part of the wreckage splits their habitat, so they can't meet their neighbors on the left. You can guess what awesome species lives in here, but we're going to save them for when we go downstairs. First, let's take a second and turn around and appreciate the ultimate theming. This is what really sells the idea that Wild Arctic is one large research station, evidence that people live here. There's bunk beds, canned foods, but you know what really sells it is definitely the socks. Part of what also makes this a really immersive experience is this ramp to the second floor. There's additional storage for equipment, and a fake radio station plays on the speakers. I listened to the footage and heard songs by Mamas and the Papas, Kenny Loggins, and the Beach Boys, and I think, ironically, most of the songs were about warm places. At the bottom of the ramp are a bunch of oxygen tanks and listed times indicating how long these 4 animals can hold their breath, but it's also a challenge to see how you can hold your breath. So Johnny put his lungs to the test, and we were in fact able to confirm that he is definitely part marine mammal. Just around the corner is the lower floor of the ship. Since it's capsized, that technically makes this the upper deck. From here, you'll see animals underwater in reverse order, which means we're about to get an up-close encounter with walruses. They can also tolerate the cold because their blubber is just as thick, sometimes even thicker than a beluga's. SeaWorld Orlando is one of 4 places in the United States where you can find a walrus. The others are the Indianapolis Zoo, Point Defiant Zoo in Washington, and SeaWorld San Diego. All have been featured on the channel before, so this could be our very last virtual encounter with the walrus as a tour group. I haven't been very public about it, but I have been very critical of SeaWorld's lack of educational signs. Wild Arctic, though, has been the exception, but I did notice on my last visit that they added even more stuff. Now, there's extra info on what's giving these walruses a hard time in the wild, and you can even identify and get to kind of personally know all of SeaWorld's giant pinnipeds, including one of their most recent rescued residents. Since it's in reverse order, that means the next thing that we're going to see is an underwater view of the penguins, who didn't swim, so here's the seals instead. Now, back to the polar bears. Even though there aren't any on SeaWorld property these days, they're not entirely gone from their imagery. Next to the penguins, they did keep the interpretive display and video showing how these bears will wait for seals by their breathing holes in the ice. Your animal journey ends with one final goodbye from the belugas and one last learning station. If you want to see how you measure up to all of the animals that you just saw, you can do that. Don't know if I broke it though, because I got two very different results that were not close to the actual answer. There's one final frozen push through a dark, dusty, rocky hall before being transported back to Florida and into Wild Arctic's gift shop. Now, as promised, I did say that I would put both Florida's and California's Wild Arctics side by side to show just how different they are. Both helicopter simulator rides closed in 2020. As you saw, Florida recently replaced theirs with a soaring experience. San Diego didn't replace the space as far as I know. They did expand outside with a family coaster. The first thing that you'll notice when you actually walk in San Diego's version, there's no fake sky or feeling of a recreated outdoor atmosphere. You are in the research base station from beginning to end. While in Orlando, you start quote-unquote outside and make your way inside the base. Both Wild Arctics have an ice wall. Orlando's is by itself and part of the wall that surrounds the base of the dome. San Diego's is inside the frozen ship. Both begin with belugas, but all of San Diego's animals are outside 100% of the time when they're on display, but the exhibit designs are similar. As I just implied, San Diego's is also themed around an icebound ship, but this one is more of a spectacle by itself, and even though you can walk through it, it isn't used as a viewing space just as you saw in Orlando. Also, the viewing areas in California aren't as immersive. San Diego's second habitat also opened with polar bears, but eventually filled the space with sea otters, then seals, and then once again sea otters. Not exactly Arctic animals either, but hey, at least they're not penguins. The third animal is also a walrus, but rather than having to trek different levels to see the entire exhibit like the one in Orlando, San Diego's shows you the entire habitat with a sloped viewing area. But if you want to see the belugas and otters underwater, you do have to go to the second floor. And to get there in Orlando, there's this large warehouse tunnel. But across the country, you have to make your way down their own version of the HMS Erebus, which to me is honestly a lot better. Overall, even though it lacks that thematic, immersive, almost Disney-like magic, I much prefer San Diego's take on the Arctic simply because it gives the animals outdoor access at all times. Next on Zoo Tours, for the third week in a row, we are staying right here in Florida and go about an hour northeast from Orlando to Daytona and explore just about everything that one of America's newest aquariums has to offer. And believe me, if you're someone who's interested in rare species, you're not going to want to miss this. So as always, thank you so much for watching this episode of Zoo Tours. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't already so you don't miss our next adventure, and I'll see you guys next time.